Welcome, everyone, to Becoming Awesome, AWS's live stream podcast where Amazon insiders introduce you to the humans of AWS. I'm your host, Ray Thomas, senior recruiter with AWS's infrastructure organization. And whether you're watching this live and ready to engage with us in the chat or watching on demand later on, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be streaming from. And so today, as you notice, Jenna will be out, but we're actually doing like a summer recap, video here today. I actually snipped about 7 clips from previous episodes that I wanted to revisit because I thought it was really important, given what some of the guests had shared and some of the conversations that we had in general. We'll be talking about earned trust, the leadership principles, things that some of the guests had learned about themselves, combating bias, also including transitioning from the military to AWS, and just again share everyone's experience and get your feedback on that. So again, if you are ready to engage in chat, can't wait. Drop a quick note. Let me know where where you're streaming from, and happy to engage. So please have those comments come in. So yesterday, I actually met for the first time Jordan Watkins, who's one of the senior managers from the cloud logistics team. And one of my colleagues had been working on a brand new role that was kind of obscure. And so he created like a little video snippet, with them to add to their job descriptions to provide more visibility into the role itself and what it actually means. And what happened was he said something about the leadership principles, or specifically earned trust. And he had a great 95-second analogy story that I was like, oh my God, that's so simple and really kind of makes a big impact. So let me quickly add to stage and see if, let me know if you can hear it as well.
For me, I'll take a moment and just share a quick story of earning trust is so important. And so in this case, there's 3 people and they're walking through, and there's earth, there is fire, and there is trust. And they are going through and they're walking through the village, right? And they get to the end of the village. They're about to go out in the deep forest. And a little boy runs up and he says, hey, whoa, if you go out there, what happens if I lose you? Well, fire goes, hey, don't worry. If you lose sight of me, where you see smoke, I'll be there. Just look for smoke. You'll see me, right? Okay. And then boy goes, whoa, what about you? And earth goes, hey, if you lose sight of me and you lose touch, all you have to do is look where there's green, there's growth, because that is me, earth. He goes, what about you, trust? And trust goes, you better keep a close eye on me, because if you lose me, I'm really hard to find again. And I believe that, and I do that with my teams. It is about the trust that we build within each other and the trust we have with our customers. And so that's how I lead, is let's never violate the trust amongst ourselves, let alone with our customers and our expectations. When we make promises, let's keep them. When we set deliverables, let's meet them. And so that is how we grow. And as a team, we're doing that together. And we keep marching towards that vision that we set out in front of us of how we want to be the Earth's best employer. And on top of it, we really want to just go deliver those results for our customers to make their day better every single day.
I thought that was really, really interesting and powerful, simple analogy. So, what are your thoughts? Drop your comments in the chat. Would love to hear what you got out of that, because honestly, there are times where I do everything I can to be customer obsessed, and I try to do everything I can to earn trust or maintain the trust. And there are times where things become hectic. Things get thrown at you from left field, and you may not be able to deliver on time that you initially promised. So it's also about being able to convey, that what's actually happening, having that difficult conversation with the other stakeholder, and making sure that they're not trying to guess what's happening and what's not. So it's really important to maintain the trust, as I said, because it's really hard to get it back. It's like even a personal relationship, right? Someone that says, hey, they're going to be there for you on this day, on your big day, and they don't show up. If they don't show up, you pretty much lose their trust. But But if you, let them know beforehand, like, hey, this is what's happening. I'm so sorry, etc. And being able to have that conversation, they'll be like, oh man, no problem. Do your thing. We'll look forward to the next time. So being able to have those difficult conversations when it's really important is also part of earning trust. So that's one thing. So the other snippet that wanted to share is how we define the leadership principles. And here's the Jenna Lass and I quickly talked about this. That, like, how would you describe the Amazon leadership principles in the first place? What do you think? What does it mean to
Yeah,
you?
I mean, it is our culture, right? So, what is a culture? A culture is built off of values, it's what an organization promotes. So, Amazon promotes its culture through our leadership principles, or promotes leadership principles, which in turn defines our culture. So, they are behaviors and norms and expected norms of behavior. So they define how to act, right? And there are times when we are in situations and it feels confusing, and there's a lot of different ways we can go. It's a moment to stop, review, and be led by the definition of the leadership principle in that moment. Sometimes they conflict with each other. So that's where there comes judgment on which is really the right path to take. And so because our culture is so self-directing, I think that this is the roadmap for how to operate in the Amazonian way.
So I want to ask again, anyone that's streaming here, if you've ever interviewed or planning on interviewing, if you come across the leadership principles, how would you define them? Like, what was actually running through your mind as you read them? Let me know. Type it in chat. Would love to hear your thoughts. But one thing that I mentioned was, you demonstrate these leadership principles day in and day out, whether you're grocery shopping or you're trying to, pick out a new house, or you're here at work working with your peers and customers. It's a culture of thought. And how do you go about making the decision to take a certain set of actions? How do you know those are the right actions to take? So that's kind of what's really critical, and that's kind of what we're trying to get from interviewing and trying to capture that data. Are you, we always ask the follow-up questions. Why do you think it was important to do that? What would have happened if you didn't do that? It's being able to walk us through your thought process and making sure that you probably did the best you could in the situation that you were in. So that's one of the key things. We actually then had another episode where one of the guest questions were, it was more about think big. So let's see this. Vaughn, what would be an example thinking big as an individual contributor? Great question. So let's go to think big. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. They think differently and look around corners for ways to serve customers. Jenna, again, what do you think?
Yeah, listen, it depends on the role, but the objective here is to demonstrate that you can identify and take bold risks, even if the way to get there is unclear. And so, I don't know, it doesn't have to be like, you created AWS, I mean, it could be something like you inspected a process that wasn't really great for your operation. And so you recognize that there's an opportunity to turn it on its head, and do it another way or completely eliminate it. I mean, that could also tie actually to invent and simplify. But I'm just trying to help you understand that, Yvonne, that it it is thinking big, but it's within the scope of your role, right? So think of it as like, what am I doing that's out of the box, right? Where have I used my creative chops to solve a problem? What wasn't working that I have helped make work, right? So it's really more about the identifying and solutioning that is outside the maybe the norm of operations.
About So I wanted to touch on that. I'll give you an example, personal example. Prior to joining AWS, I was at another organization, and one of the things that were challenging were this company didn't have a social presence. They're a major media company, but they didn't have any kind of presence, whether it was on back then Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or anything, to kind of showcase what the culture's like for the developers. Because I noticed when I was working on the engineering floor, and I see the camaraderie, I see what they would do outside of work, how they really get together. And no one knows about that. It's not only the great technology, but also no one knows about the great people behind there. So I went to the SVP at that time, and I actually pitched an idea, came up with a simple visual saying, a mock-up showing like Instagram, and then kind of like a picture that I've taken of the team, and then a caption of what one of the stories can look like, saying we should start to showcase what it's really like internally, what the peers are doing, and then maybe it'll help attract some more talent as well. We were trying to compete with some of the cool startups at that time, and it was really one of the more difficult things. And then we put a plan together. So how do we go about now doing so? Who would have to get involved? What kind of legal advice that we need to get as well, because of the type of content that we can put out, what we can't put out, everyone that's involved. So I actually had to then put together a whole other strategy step by step. And then from there, looking to build a whole social strategy for them. So that was one example. I didn't go through the whole details of actually talking through the whole process and the end outcome, which you normally would on an interview, but that's one way of thinking big. Another was many years ago when I was when I used to work for an agency, the platform, the applicant tracking system that we used was a little bit archaic. It didn't have a lot of the great new, great new features that a lot of the newer ATSs, as we call them, have. We were missing ways of automating, reaching out to certain candidates at a certain time, reminders, being able to use AI to actually curate the messaging, properly, that will entice them to respond. So it was, I thought about it, I was like, hey, I know you have 20 years of information in this database. Maybe it's time to now migrate that into a better platform and to actually use the data and whatnot. So long story short, what ended up happening was it actually led to increased revenue month over month because of all the new features we were able to use. So you have one that just housed information. The other one actually was able to show you the different things you could do with that information, with all the contacts, and how to organize it, and how to do reach outs and identify talent much better within your own database. So that's another idea of like thinking big. So, it was funny, the person that asked that question around, they also asked a question around invent and simplify. And after we, described that invent and simplify is more about maybe sometimes improving a process and whatnot, they thought that, oh my God, I thought you had to have invented something in order to work at Amazon. So that itself is eye-opening, because God knows how many people also think the same thing, right? How many people did not apply thinking they were not good enough because they didn't do that? So, hopefully whoever's watching this, you don't need to have invented something if you're more earlier on in your career. So that's another. So here I'm going to play. I'm going to bring back. We had Dwayne Ellerby, who's from our data centers, and he's also one of the directors of Ben Bold, which is focusing on building the leadership program within the Black Employee Network community in the data centers. So I asked him about the other leadership principle: hire and develop the best. Because I also tell people, our job as hiring managers is not just to hire, look for the perfect candidate. It's also looking at the opportunities to create the best, right? So we have someone that can come in, hit the ground running, but with the resource that we provide, can we get them to really raise the bar and accelerate them at a different level? And that's kind of like I asked him, like, what is his approach for the data center community? About your team, right? How do you, we normally hire high performers, and your job as a manager is not just to hire; it's hire and develop the best. How do you go about developing? How do you make them better?
Oh man, there's so many programs in Amazon. There's probably many programs that you probably haven't heard of that's just sitting out there. But one of the things that I do is I found that I have an outgoing personality. So talking to people, it's almost crazy. You will never go anywhere in Amazon and ask for help for something. And somebody don't only just gives you word help, they'll send you links, they'll connect you to a person. And that's exactly what I do to my techs. It's like everybody here is expected to be a leader. Yes, I'm the manager, but when we're talking about problems in the data center, like I said, ambiguity, no straight way path forward, it's like I want them to come to me and like, oh, you have 26 years of IT experience, but they're the ones actually doing the job now. So I want them to come to me when Dwayne says something crazy that's outlandish that we can't do. I want them to feel comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, Dwayne, I love you, but no. Some of the things we do to develop, there's so much stuff here. So we give, I think it's 10% of the duty day, 10% of their day they can work on things that has nothing to do with their job, but it's actually a professional development opportunity. Mm-hmm. So if you've been inside the data center, there's offices, there's a quiet room, but there's also usually a cafeteria of some sort, not all spruced up like commercial, but right. There's an area that they can go sit quietly. I have a technician who did a lot of AWS's machine learning university, and he's one of my high performers. I have another technician who just got her Sec Plus, and she studied at work for that during those 10% of your day, actually working on that. And then there's other development opportunities too. There's volunteer opportunities. If we have San Antonio Food Bank, that's just stacking groceries, helping people with groceries and take it to the car for underprivileged families. There's the Reefs Across America is something that somebody's putting together for December time frame. There's so many opportunities. It's like, and when they find an opportunity themselves, we're busy. Like before we got on here, I was telling you we were still in escalation after escalation. But when we're busy, we have the good sense enough to separate that escalation. We know that somebody can take care of this and somebody can also go do Reefs Across America. We can find a way to get everything done. And then when you give people that flexibility, they find a way to get things done for you as the manager too, as far as work goes. So,
right.
And
So yeah, going back to what Dwayne had mentioned, learn and be curious is so critical here. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly taking time to learn about different ways of doing our day-to-day better, our day-to-day job better, finding something that's more of a strategic angle as well, which is how we came across, building this platform with Becoming Awesome. So you have to take the ownership to learn. So the hiring managers normally create a safe space for you to have the time to go and develop yourself, because the more your skill sets, the more skill sets you have in your toolbox, the better it is for our customers too. So it's very well known. So there's a lot of optional training, and there's certain mandatory training that's also out there, but it's all because it's better for you and the customers and all of us as a whole. Because one thing we do as leaders, not just to develop ourselves individually, but we have the trait that they know that if I find something that's going to make me better, I know about 10 to 20 other people that can utilize those same skill sets. I could go out and train them as well and help elevate the rest of the team. So things of that nature are kind of things that we look for. Isaiah, welcome. Missed you, buddy. I wish Northern Massachusetts, Southern New Hampshire had an AWS data center. I would love to work in one. Yeah, so they can only go where there's enough power and space to be able to build those data centers, Isaiah. So hopefully one day there is. But as you see in the news, there's a lot of other data centers that are popping up. If any of those locations, make sense to you and your family, definitely ping us. Would love to have you. So, so with that, it's a little out of the way. I'm sure it is, Isaiah. So with that, we talk about the strong managers always create that safe space, as Dwayne had mentioned, where they can lead with empathy. At the same time, they create the safe space where their teammates can push back and say, "Hey, I can't," or for whatever reason, or say, "Hey, there's a better way of doing that," and that's where the rest of the team actually learns and continues to showcase some of the great skill sets that the teammates have. They all shine in one way or another as you get to talk to them. So one of the other things that we asked, we asked people on the show is, what have you learned about yourself since joining? And this is Padma Iyer, who's one of our CSMs, who actually had an incredible story of bouncing back from major health issues, being very resilient, and then even learning how to get back their motor skills and now thriving, where we currently are. So let me bring them back on.
What are you learning about yourself today now that you've immersed yourself in this culture that you describe so well and identify with, is what I'm hearing. How are these principles helping you shape what you're learning about yourself while being in this environment? I've looked at your LinkedIn profile. You've worked in several different environments. So I would imagine you've learned a little bit about yourself in each environment. So I want to zone into what you are learning about yourself here today in this environment.
For me, AWS has been one of the best things that's happened. And I was sharing this over a Slack message with Ray a couple of weeks ago. I think Amazon is a place where careers are made. The sheer size and scope of the organization means that there is an endless array of opportunities for us to explore. At AWS, I have had the opportunity to work on groundbreaking projects. I've learned new skills, whether it is AI, machine learning, generative AI, speaking opportunities, writing blogs, working with people who are extremely talented and smart. And it's also given me an opportunity to advance my career in ways I may never have found elsewhere. I also think innovation is a big part of Amazon's blood. It's allowed me to think big, take risks, and experiment. Couple of years ago, I would never have imagined that I would take up speaking engagements in front of a large audience. And this year, I was grateful to speak at the AWS LA Summit and the AWS NYC Summit, based on projects that I worked on that were Think Big, Pan Amazon, and big impacts to both AWS, Amazon, and our customers.
So something that came out that I personally connect with is them looking back and saying, "Hey, I didn't see myself speaking in front of people a few years back." Same thing here. I didn't expect to be able to be trusted to have a live stream podcast on AWS channels when I grew up with a major speech impediment. English is not my first language, and then you add the ADHD where I have 4 different streams of thoughts going at the same time. Being able to become speaker certified and trusted in front of an external audience. So it goes to show that it's a culture where they give you room to fail. They give you room to experiment. And but you have to be a leader to come in and think big. You have to be the type of person that come and say, that has that internal fire in them to make things better, want to be better, help others be better. And again, them creating the leadership, creating that space to be able to experiment and fail fast, or put together a team to build something that's going to make a major impact across the internal organization as well as external. That's kind of the culture here. So I think it's incredibly fantastic to hear her, and then you have multiple other guests I had throughout the show say the same thing. It's always about the environment, and this is what the show's about. It's literally to share different people, different perspectives, and the more you listen to the different folks on different teams, you'll find the same pattern of being able to be in an environment that fosters their growth and inclusivity. But at the same time, we always talk about combating biases and whatnot. It's something that we see because we're humans. We have conscious and subconscious biases, and we always try to find ways of trying to break them. We're trying to make decisions because we need more diverse thinking in general. So we asked this question, with our next guest, Purva Pasek. How does she combat bias?
How do you actually combat bias in the industry?
Yeah, I have run into bias. I'm not gonna lie, right? It is true. It's still there, and I think the first thing is acknowledging and calling it out, because unless it's done, unless somebody tells you that you did something wrong, you'll continue that behavior. So sometimes people don't even realize that something that they're doing is biased, and just calling it out may actually show it to them that, okay, they need to change their behavior. So that's one of the first things. The other is sometimes people just don't acknowledge, or they will continue to do that. So working power of numbers helps, right? Like having a systemic support system helps you address that bias, because then you can be like, hey, this is a behavior that needs to change. Here's how we can change it. Here's how we can build better policies, for example, to enable others and to make sure something like this doesn't happen in the future. So for me, Jenna, addressing biases, it starts with acknowledging there's bias, identifying biases, and then working to find changes. And sometimes I've had to just be like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I am not going to go work with X, Y, or Z person, or I'm not going to go work with X, Y, and Z company because I do not align what I think about, what are my values, what's important to me doesn't align with theirs. Have I been very successful? Not always, just being very honest. And I think you can't address bias just by yourself. You need to have the right support system. You need to bring everybody together to address it. But literally, the first thing is calling out where the bias is and what is the issue.
What you've shared.
So yeah, bias is something that I talk about all the time. It's actually even my job as a bar raiser when I'm running debriefs. When I look at the notes that the interviewers had input on the candidate, we make sure that even in the initial training before they become interviewers, that they kind of remove biases, that we only make decisions based on factual data that we collected directly from the candidates themselves. It's what they said. So assumptions, hey, they didn't come from an environment, like ours, etc. They don't operate at the scale. Well, it depends on the role. Do they need to have had that specific right now, or can we get them to that level? Have they thought the same way? Do they think like us? Did they operate like us? It's like the difference between driving a Honda versus driving a Lamborghini. They know how to drive, right? Do we just train them on, some of the differences is like how fast they can move now and how to be careful at certain corners? I look at it from that perspective. When I talk to folks, so it's a matter of do they have the foundational skill sets to be able to do the job, and do they have and are they thinking like us? Are they going to do it in a way that's going to uh, be customer obsessed? Everything's for the customer. So again, it's all about putting everything into context more than anything else. So I have my own biases. I know that you get biases by being complacent. I think by just doing the same thing over and over just because of work doesn't mean that there isn't something better. Doesn't mean that there isn't a better avenue in doing something. I actually asked the hiring manager yesterday about that role. It's like, hey, you're looking to hire someone for this global logistic type role. They need to have had that massive. They have to have come from that organization that's as large as us, from the supply chain side. And like, no, it's more about the thinking. How would they approach that challenge? How would they do that? That's where my own bias was busted, because I was assuming they might say yes and etc., but it wasn't. So again, I'm learning day in and day out. When you challenge your own biases, it's going to be incredible. You start to see things differently, and you end up having a bigger pool of resources around you. That's only going to make things better if you're especially if you're building a product that's going to service all types of folks. And now, speaking of that, we talk about the military, and we have a partnership with them, obviously. But I want to bring on Craig Halsey, who is one of our DoD partners, and we asked him about transitioning from the military to AWS, especially when we're doing a lot of hiring for the data center community, and we know that there's a lot of talent from the military that would actually that would be a great fit for the data center community that we're continuously building. And here's what his thoughts were about the transitional skill sets.
I wonder how, just trying to connect the dots here, how you believe your military experience may have prepared you to work here and be successful at Amazon.
Absolutely. No, that's a great question, Jenna, and one that I get a lot. It was exciting to hear recently that Amazon recently achieved its pledge of hiring 100,000 veterans. That goal was accomplished, I want to say, a couple of months ago. And it really is a testament to the culture at Amazon, and really the synergies between at least my experience in the Army and what made me to some degree feel like I was succeeding as a soldier, and how that translates to being successful at Amazon. It's exciting for me as an Amazonian working with Amazon Web Services, directly supporting the United States Army, to really see some of those direct similarities almost every day. I do a lot of work with human capital management and those that lead sort of the human enterprise within the Army. And at Amazon, we have roughly 1.5 million Amazonians. The United States Army, with all the components and all the Department of the Army civilian population, is roughly 1.3, 1.4 million. So pretty comparable in terms of size. And obviously Amazon has a global customer base and a global mission, just like the United States Army does. And I also thought that it's powerful at Amazon that everything we do at AWS is driving the customer experience, focused on the mission, and ultimately in a lot of ways that comes down to making sure that potentially an Amazon delivery driver, who's on the ground delivering a package, delights that customer and is able to get that end result in the hands of the customer at the time and place that it's needed. And that has a lot of correlation, at least in the mind of Craig Halsey, of a soldier, being on a patrol anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, needing to have the resources at their disposal for them to accomplish that mission and deliver that result. And so there's just conceptually, there's a lot in common that we have. And I think customer obsession and how we focus on that at Amazon is so important because the United States Army is a soldier-centric organization where ultimately the needs of the soldier come first and foremost. And I think there's a lot of power that comes from that because, You're not always focusing your leadership energy up and out, if you will, but you're focusing it down and in on ultimately, who is it that matters the most, and how do we need to make sure that we empower those soldiers or those builders to be able to achieve their most potential. So I just have seen so much synergy between those two organizations that I absolutely think that my Army experience has helped me be a successful Amazonian up to this point. And I also think that can work in reverse as well. And I know I spend a lot of time working with Amazonians that are in the Army Reserve or the Army National Guard, and how, what makes you, the leadership principles that make you successful here at Amazon. There's a lot of parallels to what makes soldiers be able to adapt and overcome and succeed there as well. So pretty long answer, but I just think that those alignments and those synergies are really powerful. And it's really why I continue to be so passionate about what we do at AWS and how it can bring solutions that elevate the soldier experience in the future.
Yeah. So, Craig, so I know Isaiah, I just popped up your comment. I'll put it back, but Craig was a great chat. He is passionate about what he is doing. I couldn't agree more. Craig was someone that was brought on through our Hiring Our Heroes program. I actually dropped a link in the chat if you want to learn more about Hiring Our Heroes. And, he reached out, talked to me about what he's trying to do with this partnership and what the government is trying to do with AWS, and even how to recruit talent and recruit soldiers for them. It's the passion that he has and the drive that he has. You kind of see, where it all kind of stems from. And then when we asked him specifically what, how does it all translate from the military to whatnot? I tell hiring managers, if you want someone that could deliver results, that's your person. If you want someone that can deal with ambiguity and with obstacles, that's the person that can handle it, because they get thrown things at them out of left field, but they're able to maneuver around it, and survive pretty much, right? If you're actually on the field. So the military is first off, thanks to everyone that's supported that's been in the military, that's a veteran. Thank you for your service. I know we have 9/11 coming around tomorrow. I'm a New Yorker, so it definitely hits home. I know exactly where I was when those attacks had happened. So it's super important that we recognize them and their sacrifices and everyone and all the responders first. But again, when you look at their background, if you want someone to come in and really focus on the mission, what the outcome we're trying to achieve with our customer, and trying to do it the best way possible, you don't have any other better sponges, as I would call them, right? You give them the amount of the direction and some of the resources, they'll figure it out and they'll get it done. So love what we've done. Love what we've done with Hiring Our Heroes, and the commitment that we had to hiring hundreds of thousands of folks and being able to deliver that. I want to know what your thoughts are. If you take a look at some, go back to some of the videos that we had shared, some of the clips that I shared. If there's anything that stood out, please let me know. I actually put a quick link to our survey as well. It takes only a minute. It only takes a minute. It actually will look like this. It's just want to find out, where, what your thoughts are after watching the video, where you watched the video, and open-ended comments as far as, about the episode itself, what you like, what you didn't like. And then we actually read this. We read this every single time. And we love the few comments we get every week. And it helps us develop some of the content and think about the type of guests that we want to bring on board, and the type of topics we want to share. So as I'm focusing on building a new season for Becoming Awesome, I'm glad we had this opportunity to recap and re-listen to some of the key points that were made throughout the summer. The other thing is, again, if you are watching this on Twitch, I would love for you to make sure that you follow the AWS Twitch channel, because this is the channel to follow if you want to be directly in contact with the SMEs building on AWS. There's different programs from Gen AI to serverless to whatever piques your interest, where you can go in and build and learn directly and ask those questions. And if you're on Twitch already, make sure you follow the AWS's careers page on the YouTube AWS Careers YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. If in the future you have interest to maybe join AWS, but you still want to know more about what the day in the life is like for certain type of folks, whether it's just solution architects or the developers, or what it's like to, what it's like for women at Amazon, or what it's like to be, what the Asian community is doing at Amazon. This is where you actually see all the great video created by Employer Brand Team, and it will, again, provide more context. This gives a voice to the people that are here, so you can make an informed decision for yourself. See if we're the right environment for you. And if you're inspired to learn more, make sure you reach out. Make sure you reach out to us. Make sure you reach out to the recruiters. Make sure you apply to those roles you never thought you may be qualified for. Again, shoot your shot. It doesn't hurt. Shoot your shot. If you fall into a black hole, don't worry about it. It will happen. But one day, someone like myself may explain why you may be in a black hole. Let's see what Isaiah is mentioning. What's this? I would love to see folks early in their career with AWS or recently hired, maybe 6 months to a year. We actually have had that. It all depends on whether they are speaker certified or not by then. So to be able to be speaker certified, you have to be here for X amount of time. It's a short amount of time. And actually we had recent folks early on in the career. We had associate level solution architects. So if you go to our landing page, which I also shared in the chat, if you scroll down and you'll see some of the females that we had for solution architects, a couple of them are at the associate level, and they talked about how they transitioned here and how long they've been here and whatnot. So there's definitely a lot of content, but Isaiah, I'll also share with Employer Brand, to see if there's dedicated content from folks that recently joined as well. Okay, so we'll do that. So I remember them, TechU grads. Yes, exactly. So the TechU is one of her. Who's your favorite wrestler? The Zero Sleep. Oh my God! Right now, it's so hard to answer. I will tell you this from the female perspective. I will always say Charlotte Flair. She is the GOAT. From the men's, to me, it's a tie between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. So Hartstead. Let's see. My favorite wrestler was Bill Goldberg. I don't know if you saw Raw last night, but his name came up with Bret Hitman Hart, so that was fantastic. And let's see. And Mr. Unreasonable, Randy Macho Man Savage. He was college educated way back. Absolutely right. So it's funny you bring this up. I actually thought about becoming awesome and having external guests, and we're allowed to have external guests, and whatnot. And I actually thought about what it would be like to maybe one day have someone from the WWE come in and talk about what it's like to be a leader in their world, because again, perspective matters. It's not just being a leader in the tech world. I think it's like this inherent trait, that you have, something internal that will make you a leader no matter where you are, no matter what industry. And when you look at WWE, of course, right, it's theatrics, it's the athleticism, it's being able to storytell and whatnot. Even with Craig Halsey, when he and I were talking about the program that he's developing, I say that one of the key things to do is be able to be a strong storyteller. People identify with strong stories because they can relate to it. And if you can be a great storyteller, that's a true story based on true story rather than fiction, then you would make the right impact with the right people and move forward in a very genuine path. So I never tell anyone that things are perfect. It never is. We're a large organization. Everyone's minds changes, demands change. People have different priorities, but it's how do we manage that? How do we work through that? That makes a big difference. This is where the leadership principle questions come in, because things going to change. How are you going to effectively work together on that? So that's all it. You got Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Yes, he was fun. And then Gorgeous George. Now you're really taking it back to when I was like about 3-4 years old. Let's see. Serious question. Why would someone want to join the talent networks? Do recruiters reach out to folks, or is it just a job alert? Great question. So this is how the talent network works. I think they're trying to revise it where we're trying to build a pipeline of people like yourself that self-identify, saying, I have interest in AWS. I am at this level, right? So the thing that we're trying to be better and we're working on is to say, do they have a specific interest for this specific job family? Make believe Isaiah, I'm talking to someone like yourself that came from the financial industry, the banking industry, right? And say you want to only be alerted about tech roles within the finance versus a job alert saying, hey, there's a new opening and it's across anything. I think for us, the better we are at identifying talent like yourself that is only interested in very specific lanes, may be better not only for you, but also for the business. At the same time, you also have to be a little bit self-aware, right? You have to be self-aware in the sense that if I have no experience in genomics, but I have interest in it, I can't go in, or I shouldn't be going in and applying for a mid-level or senior role. It just doesn't work that way, because again, we hire based on, is this candidate better than 50% of the people already doing that job at that level? So these are the type of things that are really important, right? So again, long-winded answers, but the way it's supposed to work is these talent networks, when you self-identify, it's one of the streams that we look at, one of the pool of talent that said, I'm interested in that. And if the new role that we have aligns with this pool, we should reach out to them and say, hey, we just got a new role. Would you be interested? So that's part of our reach outs and whatnot. So hope that answers your question. I've seen a lot of AWS content creators seemingly work from home. Is it rare that AWS hires new employees that are fully or mostly remote on the SA side of things? Great question. So it depends on your team, and things could change. So do not hold me to this, okay? So solution architects, they're customer facing. So they're actually out on the field. They're actually at customer sites for the most time. And there are other times that customers come into an office. So when you're going out to a customer site, that's also part of being in an office, part of the return to office type thing that people are kind of questioning. We don't hire fully remote for the most part. We don't hire fully remote, but it depends on the job family, where if you are external customer facing, that actually is part of the return to the office. So if you're going out to a customer, that counts as being in an office. So hopefully that answers your question. But again, it's team by team. If you're developers, again, for the most part, we have like development center built, and the main product team are sitting together. So they do want people to be in office at least 3 days a week. And as far as what times you got to be there, that's the part where there's a lot of flexibility. You can work with that with your manager and whatnot and figure that out. Let's see. What do you think about linking the stories with local cultural symbols, myths, legends? Do you think it would give the story a greater power or not appropriate? Ooh, great question. Great question. I think the problem here is this. It's not a matter of it being appropriate, but it's a matter of whether the messaging reaches a broader audience. Like, for example, when we try to share stories, we try to make it something where the vast majority understands that. How many people watch wrestling? Not everybody, right? So if I'm trying to make a point, I can't use a wrestling analogy unless I'm talking to someone that's actually a wrestling fan, because then they'll know it. So, for example, if I had a group of wrestlers, like I know everyone watching right now, they're wrestling fans. There's 20 of them. I would use wrestling analogies all day. But if only one person watches wrestling and then the others do not, using the wrestling analogy would only hit home for one person, it's a complete miss on everybody else. So again, whether it's cultural symbols, myths, legends, it all depends on everyone's, because I can't tell who the audience is right now. I can't tell what your background is until you specifically started talking about wrestling. And I was like, all right, that person is, we identify, we can talk about that. So fantastic questions. I don't think it's something not appropriate. I just don't think it'll make as big of an impact until it's a little bit more generalized. So keep these questions coming. I actually love it. Love these questions. So it's fantastic. And then as far as the content let me go back to this for the content creators. So here's the thing. If I'm live streaming, I want to be somewhere where I'm very comfortable. There's a lot of prep beforehand, and I want people to see me as a human, because this show is all about the human. So including the hosts themselves, right? So this has actually been the most incredible icebreaker when I talk to anyone, when I'm interviewing people. When I'm interviewing candidates, and I'm maybe even the bar raiser on the final interview, they have this nerves, and then they see me with this. If I'm happy to be here when I'm doing the interview, they calm down. They see it's just another human being just trying to ask these questions, normal questions, and just trying to gather data. When I'm talking to a new hiring manager, like, oh wow, that's really cool background. Again, we just talk about that, and then it just builds a human connection. And again, when it comes to the content creators, they're gonna create it anywhere they can at that moment. Sometimes I look at some of the other peers that I follow. And they are, sometimes creating content right in the office, or when they're out on the field, at a customer site, they're out, on some random rooftop of their friend's building. Again, when it comes to creation, with our minds, it's wherever we are. If it inspires us to create right then and there, because maybe the backdrop is hitting us a certain way, we're gonna do that. Okay. So, anyways, I'll give it another 30 seconds if there's more questions. Because I'm happy to chat. We have a few more minutes, but if not, we'll cut things shorter. But thank you for these questions. It's great questions. And again, tying things back, I hope what we do here comes across as genuine, because it is. Some of us really care about what we do. I actually shared news on Friday with a woman that saying, "Hey, you did incredibly well. I'm going to prepare an offer for you." And hearing her excitement brought the hairs up on my skin, and I got the goosebumps. And I told her that. I said, "This is the part of my job I absolutely love." And then, unfortunately, I had to make a call to someone else saying, unfortunately, we're not moving forward. And I told them it's the worst part of my job, something that will never be. It's never easy. Over 25 years of doing this, it's never easy telling someone they didn't make it. They fell short a little bit, and then afterwards, I have to go reset because I'm impacted personally. So we care. Some of it's not transactional to me. It's not transactional to most of us. And I think this is the whole purpose of showing what we do, because I really don't see a lot of anyone else actually doing this from other companies or competitors. They do some real fun stuff, right? But not to the point where we're really trying to go above and beyond to take the time from other teammates to say, I'd love for you to share your story with the world. I want people to see who you are as a human. I want them to be inspired by you because you do have a great story to tell. Everyone here does. And then we're hoping that you're able to connect the dots. You're the ones that say, you know what, think of it like a review on some of the, on Yelp or something. Someone says, hey, the food sucked, where the other's like, it was really great. We just hope you make a decision for yourself. You take the ownership to listen to all sides and then make a decision for yourself. At the same time, if you do decide to come to me or anyone else, we're going to care if we're the right person that can share the right answers, that have the answers for you, we're going to take the time to give it to you. So with that, I'll leave it there. Okay. So again, thank you so much. We're going to be developing a new season for Becoming Awesome, and the type of guests that we'll have, and excited to share that soon. This site will be updated by the end of tonight. I actually uploaded all the different episodes, their individual pages. Now I'm going to link them onto the main landing page and go from there. And look, it says Zero Sleep. It says Ray took the time with me, and I appreciate it. Have a great week. So again, thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Take care.